So to get to the detailed profiles, the first final text profile I want to introduce to you is the laboratory testing workflow. This is probably the most commonly understood lab use case. It's specimens collected by the person that orders the test, specimens collected at the lab, or specimens collected at a third-party collection site. These are transactions involving an EHR system and an LIS system and potentially any middlewares. And so the value proposition of implementing this profile is, of course, it enhances the quality of care because it reduces manual copy-paste errors, and it reduces redundant orders because you could look them up. The lab will know that there's an order out there that they should have a specimen for, but they didn't receive it, so they can go look for it. And, of course, transcription errors. It also, of course, improves the speed of getting the results back. Hopefully, it decreases the need for phone calls and so on. The standard here used is version 2 HL7 2.5.1 messaging with Bloink and SNOMED and some other standards like that. So here is a view more of where that profile sits. So we're in the hospital where the order is placed. The doctor decides needs a test, sends the orders to the filler. This is within the laboratory, and the order filler can do their testing. For that, they can use some automation profiles, which are not the LTW specifically, and then once the results are back from the instruments, the order filler reports the results. Obviously, these transactions don't stand in a vacuum. There are other IHE profiles that deal with security of the data and with patient administration. So, for example, if there's an update to the patient demographics, that can be handled through these IHE profiles, or if there's if the doctor knows the patient but needs to make a query for some more patient information, they can leverage these patient domain developed IHE profiles for that. So then we have a laboratory point of care testing profile. This is testing on specimen performed basically at the bedside under the supervision of a clinical laboratory. And here it's shortcuts the clinician's time to get their results for a panel of tests, but it's still supervised by a lab so that the testing follows the same quality procedures as a laboratory would. So this is a standard from CLSI that we're using, but it still also uses 251 HL7 as a basis. Here's what that looks like. So you have a patient administration that's using these IHE profiles to get the demographics. The physician at the bedside can check that the patient is the right patient, and they can also produce the observation that then orders the test and gets consolidates the orders and consolidates the results back in the patient arena. So the testing happens on this end over here. Then we're strictly in the laboratory area, so this is within the lab. We can have robotization, automation, basically where we deal with barcode labeling, and we can deal with sending data and data from instruments, as well as moving specimens through the laboratory and preparing them for testing with lab device automation. So it streamlines, lab device automation streamlines the operations and lab work area, and combined with the lab testing workflow profile, we've already seen that on the other slide, that it's kind of closing the loop between the testing on the instrument and the reporting the results back to the test submitter. And barcode labeling obviously has to deal with specimen collection and the labeling of the containers at the collection site. So then you don't have, hopefully you don't have mislabeled and misidentified containers, because the labeling is part of the ordering process. When you want to order a test, you do need to know what tests the lab provides, and so for that, the lab can use the lab code set distribution profile to let the ordering providers know all the tests that they're doing. And this includes the test codes that you need to order, the expected observations, the indications for when to order what tests, what kind of specimen you need to submit, what are my hours of operations for this test, what's the expected turnaround time, all those things that you want to know before you order a test. The lab can share that data through this standard, and it's again using version 2.5 master files as the basis, together with some vocabulary standards like LOINC and SNOMED. And then sharing laboratory reports. So in the lab technical workflow, we use 251 messaging to exchange lab result reports, but you could also use a CDA, a clinical document architecture, to exchange lab results. This is something that's quite common in Europe, for example, and it's also used to send those same lab results reports to public health in Europe. So it's a specific format to exchange one specific report, and the benefits of this is that this is both human readable as well as machine processable, whereas that HL7 message is really hard for most people to read and is more made to be machine processable. So the CDA kind of combines the human readable with the structured data, and it's, as you can see, it's a national standard for laboratory result reporting in Austria and Switzerland, France, and Saudi Arabia, and it's also used regionally in North America and Middle East and Asia. The standards used, as I pointed out, is the clinical document architecture documents, HL7, and using LOINC and UCIM and possibly SNOMED as well. The laboratory analytical workflow is dealing with sending work orders to the analyzer and then getting the results back to the LIS. So that originally the lab automation covered both the preparation of the tests, of the specimen for testing, as well as the actual test orders to the analyzer and results back. And then the last 3 years, we've been actually pulling that out and creating the laboratory analytical workflow profile that is specifically just for the orders and results, and the lab automation piece now is just for the preparation for specimen. So the idea here is that you have a LIS or middleware that is the analyzer manager, so that knows all the tests that need to happen. And then the laboratory has multiple different analyzers for different tests. And the middleware can dole out the testing that needs to happen on each of the different instruments. But because the instruments often are made by different vendors, the connection took a long time to happen. So the LAW profile basically harmonizes the needs across the different vendors. So all the vendors that support the LAW profile use the same data elements, understand the same data structure when they're using LAW. So it simplifies installation and maintenance of connections to all those different test systems that you have to have in your laboratory. It's also using 251 HL7, but it's pre-adopted some of the newer versions, some features from the newer versions. It recommends LOINC and uses UCIM, and it's actually the basis for the CLSI standard Auto 16 that's supposed to come out this year, so hopefully that is happening. And IHE created a conformity assessment for vendors. So that's kind of a very official Connectathon review, and I think more of that will be part of the generic IHE presentation.